And now we welcome our next speaker, Svitlana Smolenska from Kharkiv in Ukraine. Svitlana is, I guess, one of the experts on modernism in Ukraine, wrote her dissertation about that at the Lviv Polytechnic, but is also a member of ECOMOS and currently a researcher with the Volkswagen Foundation here in Germany. So, Svitlana, the floor is yours, 10 minutes, and you talk about Ukrainian examples.
In the late 1950s, okay. What should I do? Okay, thank you. In the late 1950s, in the USSR and Ukraine, experienced a return to the principles of modernism and the idea of mass housing. New residential areas began to be built on a gigantic scale across the country. What are their advantages and disadvantages? What legacy do we have 50, 60 years later? Today, these questions are particularly pressing in Ukraine, where large-scale residential areas have suffered significant destruction due to the war with Russia. In the current situation of economic decline, there is an urgent need to preserve the housing that still remains and is suitable for living. It is necessary to compare historical facts with the current situation. Here are some positions. Please, next. The idea of mass housing construction was a characteristic trend in post-war Europe, driven by the catastrophic housing shortages in cities devastated by war. Next. No, okay. Notice how similar the principles of residential development in the 1960s were in Halle-Neustadt, Germany, and Kharkiv, Ukraine. Pavlovo Pole, next, please. A district from the same period reflects this parallel. Since 1955, standard designs for unified sections of large panel, large block, and brick houses were being developed and implemented using mass-produced structural elements. The mass, natural, and cost effectiveness of their construction, along with the state's policy of providing apartments to every family for free, were clearly clean advantages at that time. Please, next. The downsides were the monotony of the developments and often poor construction quality. Apartment size were minimized and their layout was not always convenient. Kitchens were less than 6 square meters. Rooms were often walked through instead of isolated, and ceiling heights were limited to 2.5 meters. Examples of series 1 and 464 and 468 used in Pavlovo Pole during that period demonstrated these trends. Next, please. In December 1958, urban planning norms and standards for residential development were approved. Pavlovo Pole had already begun planning in the mid-1950s, making it one of the first residential areas from the late 50s to early 60s, which served as experimental models to test the new norms. These norms took into account a wide range of factors, including the region's climate and landscape, wind patterns, requirements for ventilation of the area, sunlight exposure of each apartment, and greenery at least 45% of the area. These norms align with the modern ecological principles. Next, please. According to these norms and standards, new residential areas were to be equipped with all necessary social and domestic services within walking distance. Kindergartens, schools, pharmacies, service centers, stores, etc., were planned based on the population needs, along with spaces for recreation and sports. While residential settlements from the 1960s were built according to unified, using typical designs, their urban planning solutions were always individualized, taking into account the specific of the locality and the residents' interest. Next, please. From today's perspectives, these settlements align with the ideas of sustainable urban development. Some of them actually hold urban planning value. It is interesting to note that despite the monotony and rather unattractive appearance of the Khrushchevka, as we name usually apartment buildings, Pavlovo Pole has maintained a high rating among residents for many years. In the current situation of high housing prices and utility costs, small apartments have become more in demand. Please, next. Residents are adapting the layout of Khrushchevkas to suit their needs with little concern for aesthetic of the facades. What attracts them more is the comfortable environment and living space. Pavlovo Pole was considered an elite district exactly because of its urban planning advantages. Next, please. The benefits of its territorial and natural location were skillfully utilized by planners in the late 1950s. The district is bordered by a large forest park to the northeast and a green ravine transitioning into a park to the southeast. Next, please. The center of the district was planned at the intersection of two main roads over there. And that is a boulevard, and that is that project of the center. Lenin Avenue and 23 August Street. Although the central area was not fully realized, a wide landscape boulevard marked by 6 14-story residential buildings became the focal point instead. Next, please. The boulevard was designed in the 1960s by architects Vasilyev, Ivanova, Laevskaya, and Sokolovsky. A long row of stores stretched along the boulevard, ending with a cinema. The residential areas are full of greenery, and all types of services were planned within the neighborhood. However, the standard residential building from 1960s, particularly panel buildings, were designed for a short operation period, 50-60 years, which has effectively run its course. Major repairs to the structural elements, please next, and engineering systems are necessary to extend the lifespan of these houses. However, these buildings are not state-owned, but are under the communal ownership of residents who lack funds for such repairs. From my own experience, I can say that residents who are now owners of the apartments are often not organized into housing cooperatives, do not clearly understand their responsibility for the entire buildings, and often violate rules regarding changes to the building's facades. You can see the remodels, balconies, and insulation of individual apartments on the facade. This is only a partial list of the two sides of the same coin. This issue required ardent discussion at both theoretical and practical levels to find a rational solution. Thank you very much.